going on, everybody? I'm here to show you how to time a Ford Focus that does not have timing marks. It's a pretty simple procedure, but there will be a few tools you will need. Let me show you. As you all know, Ford requires you to have some special timing tools because there is no timing marks on the engine or on the cams. It can be a hassle. I know if you've looked at it or you have a belt off right now and you're like, what the hell? It can be a hassle, but there is a reason for it. You will need a plate which locks the camshafts into position, and a pin which locks the crank in the top dead position center. The reason why they don't use timing marks because they think it's inaccurate, which it technically is inaccurate because you can never get them just right. This method you can get it spot dead on. Now, I know not everybody has $149 to go buy, the OTC tools or, Snap-on tools or whatever to go buy this kit. So, what you can do is where the pin is, which I will show you later on in the video. There's a pinhole where the pin inserts into the engine to hold the crank at top dead center. You can actually use either an old head bolt, which will work perfectly, or you can go buy a head bolt set, which is only 20 bucks. And I know it's 20 bucks, but the head bolt works perfectly. It goes right in there and you can screw it in and it's perfect. It lines the engine straight up. Also, you can use a straight bar as long as you get it real close to the size that the cams are on the back. I'll show you here in a few seconds what I'm talking about, and we'll go from there. Okay, here I got my two cams. I got my intake cam and I got my exhaust cam, as you can see. Now, as you can see here on the back, I already have my plate in, and if you notice, my plate is locked into the back side of the cams on each side. Okay, now this plate is about, let's see here. Sorry, I forgot my size of the plate. It is 15/64 thick, almost anyway. It's really close. It's about 10 thousandths off, which won't cause a big problem. In fact, you can almost see that it's really tight there. Anyway, if you had your cams out and you can't remember what cam is which, sometimes that happens. Before I was more educated, I've done that before and mixed up my cams. There's two ways of figuring out. You could either call Ford's parts store and look at the part number here, which I don't know if you can see it on this camera, but it says YSAA, and there's one here at C28 or C2B, I'm sorry, and they will tell you what side is which. Or there's an even easier way. There's a cam sensor right here. Okay, that cam sensor, and on this intake manifold, there's actually a lobe right here. Okay, the exhaust intake will not have that. Okay, so if you have a cam sensor and you can see that lobe, then you know which side is which. You just put it on the cam sensor side because that's going to be your intake side. There's also another way of telling is when you're on top dead center, you know that you're coming up to your power stroke. So you know that your exhaust stroke is going to come up sooner before your intake stroke. So if you see my lobes are further away, from the intake stroke because it turns clockwise, and my exhaust lobes are closer to the exhaust side. Okay, so that's another way of telling when you stick them on. When you're trying to compare them. So anyway, we got all that down. I got the cams all torqued back down. Now I'll go down underneath the car and show you what pin I'm talking about exactly. Okay, and just to make sure that you know what I'm talking about on the bolts, I actually have one here. This is the head bolt. They work really good for the cam pin. Okay, they go in about this far, right where my finger is. You don't want to screw it all the way in and start wrenching down on it because you'll screw up the crank. Don't do that. When it stops, you're okay. All right, and you want a screwdriver. Okay, and what you do is you stick a screwdriver and make sure you have the battery unhooked for this. Okay, as you can see, both of my terminals are unhooked. Okay. Now, if you look under here, if you notice, I have the exhaust dropped for me to get to it. Now, if you look dead ahead straight of you, you'll see my pin that I have installed right there. Okay, that is the head bolt that I'm using for my pin right now. Now, you can go buy the kit. Like I said, it will work. It will work, but this will work just the same as well. Although the kit's a little easier to put in because there's not 50 billion threads, this will work. And if you are on tight budget, like I am, this is a good way of doing it because it will not move or rotate. Don't use a screwdriver or something that will flop around in there, because the crank will move, and you don't want that. Okay, you want the crank to come to a stop exactly where it's supposed to stop. If you use a screwdriver will actually move a little bit, and it'll go past its timing point. That's why you don't want to do that. So it's very important that you use the pin. So, okay, now we're going to go on top of the engine. Alright, now what I have here now is I'm back on top of the engine, and I'm about ready to turn it up to top dead center now that the pin is in. Now, when you get the pin in, it will still move, the engine will move until you get to top dead center, okay? Now, what I like to do is I like to take a screwdriver, okay, and I like to gently put it in there, okay? Now, the reason why I say it's very important to have the battery unhooked, because if you turn that over with the starter while the screwdriver is in there, you'll have a nice little hole in your piston. So don't do it. Unhook the battery is very important, okay? Don't even risk it. It's just not worth it, okay? So you put the pin in, okay? Now you take your ratchet here, which I'm about to do. Now we'll go down here, and then as you can see, the gear there. Now I have it off because we have to obviously get the belt on, which I already have. It's sitting on there. We just got to tighten it up. Now I'm going to turn the crank over until the screwdriver stops. Okay. Now you're going to watch the screwdriver here, and you'll see what I'm talking about here once I get this light in position. Here we go. Okay, here we go. See, that screwdriver moved and it stopped. That's perfect. It locked itself into position. The pin is where it's supposed to be, and it's at top dead center. Okay? If you're still worried about it, you can actually look inside the piston, which you probably won't be able to see on this camera, but I can see it. The piston is all the way up. Yeah, you can kind of see it on the camera, huh? Okay? So now we are ready to put our camshafts, our pulleys back on. Okay, let me grab them and we'll get back on. Okay, now if you notice I got the mount off and all that stuff, what you need to do is you got to have a jack with some 2x4s on the oil pan to support the engine, okay? Because you have to have the mount out of the way to get all this off, technically, when you're taking off, if you're just replacing your belt. Mine was already off because I had to do a head gasket on this particular engine. Now, we're going to talk about the pulley systems, okay? Now, we obviously have pulleys on our cams. Right now, they're not on. But we also have two pulleys here. And they are right here. Now, your pulleys are important, okay? Especially this one right here, because this is the adjuster pulley, okay? It must work properly for the belt to work. If it doesn't work properly, then the belt's not going to tension properly, and you'll have problems like timing issues or even bent valves at the worst case scenario, okay? And also when we tighten this, which I'll show you what it's supposed to be tightened to, you don't want to over tighten it, okay? Because this actually tightens, it's kind of like an auto tightener. It will tighten itself once it starts up. So if you over tighten it, you could possibly ruin the belt because it'll keep wanting to tighten, okay? And then this is just the other pulley right here. It doesn't have an adjustment to it, but you still want to check the bearings. Make sure they sound good and healthy. If it makes a lot of noise or rattling noise, then I would suggest replacing it. Not much to it. Bolts on right here, and the other one bolts on here. So I'm going to go ahead and stick these pulleys on, and then we'll show you how to put the belt on and adjust it. Okay?